Testing, testing. Okay, looks fine. Testing, 1, 2, testing. Kobe, stay, please. He's gonna bark anyway. Hi, Dave. How are you doing?
Okay, how are you?
Doing all right. You're the first one here. Might be the only one here today. We'll see.
Shall see.
Yeah, I didn't hear from anyone else.
Oh.
No one else comes in. Do you mind if I record it and post it anyway?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Just, so you don't talk about anything personal you don't want your classmates to know about.
Right.
Sometimes it happens. I was kind of digging around to see what other files I can play with. I have yours already open.
Okay.
And I'll show you a couple little tricks with that.
May I ask a question about our milestone for this week?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
So for the, besides our regular logo, the other piece that we have to submit, be it a business card or a flyer or etc., is that tied to, like, for All Pause, is that tied to the fundraiser, or is that just about All Pause and in general for the additional work we like?
Well, that's where the instructions are a little fuzzy because they give you the option of a business card.
Right.
You don't typically use a business card to advertise for a fundraiser or some kind of an event.
Right.
So that's why I always state in my notes, don't do a business card. It's just, it doesn't fit this particular milestone very well. Use
Right.
the business card for the module 7 collateral that you'll be designing. It's a really good one for that. So if you want to do a business card, I would save it for module 7 when you have to do a print media collateral piece. So the business card is perfect for that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
for this week,
I assumed that was not, because again, if we just did a business card, that means we could, in theory, ignore the fundraiser, which I felt like, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
it doesn't. And if you look at the rubric, I have to grade you on whether or not you choose a correct piece of collateral for this milestone advertising an event.
Right.
So the way they phrase the instructions, and this is not the first time it happens, unfortunately, is a little fuzzy. So I'm trying to get them to update the instructions for everybody, but they're so slow about doing it. So go back to my announcements where I clarify things a bit further, and I try and get really specific with you guys about why things will or will not work well. So for this week, I would suggest a flyer or a billboard, maybe like a web banner, something of that nature for the event. So this 30-day fundraiser that you're doing.
Yeah, I've started to sketch out some like flyers, so I think that's where I'm gonna go.
Okay. Yeah, and you don't have to use Adobe products for creating the flyer if you don't want to. You can use something like Canva or some similar software that we have on that list.
Right.
There's a bunch of options. Canva is the one that a lot of people gravitate to. The only thing I want you all to keep in mind is that at the end of the module 7, when you turn in your final project, it will be a logo and there will be 5 pieces of design collateral. One of them has to be print. One of them has to be social media, and the other 3 are kind of whatever you want them to be. But you want all 5 of those and the logo to kind of work as a unit.
Right.
You want them to look like they're a cohesive piece. Even though there's different pieces that make up the whole, you want the whole to have a similar look. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I mean, once you have your logo established, that already will give you some basic design motifs and some colors to work with. So that's a really good place to start. And then after that, you can start deciding, okay, well, I'm going to use like parts of my logo, like the heart or the paw print, or if it's somebody doing the hospital, they might choose certain colors from their logo that they think speak towards the idea of this NICU grand opening. Or the insurance agency is doing a fun run for the heart walk. So they will probably have a heart or a heartbeat line, like the EKG line. Or they may have some medical type, symbols or something like that in there. But you want to think about the unit, the whole design grouping before you start diving into any single piece, so that you can have similar colors and design motifs and looks so that everything works together.
Right.
So yeah, start sketching stuff out. Canva is a really good one to use for flyers, and I believe they have a billboard in there. They certainly have business cards in there. They got a bunch of stuff. Brochures is another option for you all. They have a lot of social media templates to work with, so those are pretty easy. And a lot of those are also available in Adobe Illustrator and InDesign and all that. But I know that it's harder to work in Adobe products than it is to work in Canva for doing like design and layout. Okay. So you guys have to use Adobe Illustrator to create the logo, and it has to be original work. But once you master that in Adobe Illustrator, you're free to work in other software if you want to. Okay?
Okay, great. Great.
Alrighty. All right, well, I don't see anyone else showing up, so let's go ahead and dive in.
Okay.
You had sent me your logo the other day, okay,
Yes.
and this looks different than what you sent me, I'm sure.
Yes.
The reason why you're seeing it look different is because the font that you used, I don't have on my machine. This one might be the same, but this one's definitely not. And it's got this little pink box on it. And when it opened up, it said, you don't have this font. What do you want to do? And I said, right now, ignore it, because I want to talk about this with the class and make sure they know what's going on. But there is kind of a shortcut around this problem. Anytime you create a design with text, dog is barking, noisy creature. Okay, so let's move this out of the way a little bit. All right, so Myriad Pro is like the most boring font possible, but let's go down, let's find something a little funky. Okay, you probably wouldn't use this on too much. It's a little too you know, fancified, I guess you can call it.
Right.
Okay, but let's say that this is the font that I'm using on a flyer, and I'm sending this flyer to the printer, or I'm sending it to a client to check it out, or another designer, whatever. I'm sending it out into the world to be looked at. Now, if I simply send it like this, if they don't have this particular font loaded on their machine, it's going to come out with a pink box and in any font that the system chooses. It'll try and choose one that's kind of sort of similar, but it's usually not that good of a match. Sorry, the lawn guys are here. They'll be done in a moment. So once you decide on your fonts, if you know it's not a common font, and even if it is a common font like Arial or something like that, we have to do something called create outlines. Hang on just one sec. You have a question, honey? They are gone. They went on their bikes, and Kobe's in the laundry room to stop them from barking at everybody. Okay. All right. So yeah, so once you have all your font sorted out, you have it sized, you have it laid out, you have, you know, the spacing the way you want, you've added color to it, whatever it is that you want to do with it. Once you have it looking exactly as you want on your final project, then you have it selected as a piece of text.
Okay.
And then you go up to type and create outlines. And now, instead of this being text, which you can alter using the character and the text tools, now these are individual objects.
Oh.
And they're made up of paths and anchor points. Now you can ungroup all this. You can use your keyboard shortcut, or you can go to Object, Ungroup. And now each one of these letters is its own object.
Okay.
Now, once you do this, you don't have to worry about the text matching on somebody else's machine, because this is no longer text. These are just objects that look like text, but they are not text. Okay, the system does not see it as anything that can be handled with the tools down here. Okay, so now these are just objects. Now, this is kind of an advantage because sometimes you want to adjust. Like let's say you wanted to make this larger. Hey, maybe you want to make it a little bit bigger, or maybe you have some weird plan to do something with the S, let's say. So once these are no longer text, you can just treat them as you would any other object. So now you can start personalizing this. But the main reason we do that type create outlines right here is so that we don't have to worry about there being a type compatibility issue with whoever looks at it. Okay, and this is true for PDF files too. Sometimes PDF files that you guys send us, they don't look like what you wanted them to look like. They are shifted. There's all kinds of weird layout things. That's why we always ask you guys for the PDFs and the AI files. Because sometimes I look at that PDF and I know full well this is not what you intended. You know, it's like, you know, there's lines all over it. There's extra spacing that has no reason to be there. I know it's not what you guys turned in. So that's when I have to go to the AI file and look at that to see what you did actually. So it doesn't always work out that way, but it's enough that you don't want to get caught out with your piece looking like something different than what you intended, especially if it also has that pink box on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So in this case, just for grins today, I'm just going to find another font to use. Okay, it said which one you're using, but it doesn't look like that. But I'm going to go ahead and just find a different font. Oh, that poor dog.
And while we're looking at my logo right now, I added the word. I don't know if this makes a difference. You know, on the rubric it says all paw shelter, and I added animal. Is that a bad thing? Should
No,
I
I
just?
think it's a good thing. I think it's definitely a good thing. Some people won't have anything. They'll just have all paws, which I think is pretty ambiguous. And animal shelter, I've seen people use pet shelter. I mean, if you're working with a real client, you'd obviously have to go to them and say, is this okay? Is this drastically different than what you intended it to be? You know, talk to me. So sometimes you can't do that. But in the case for us and for what we're doing, it's perfectly fine.
Okay.
No problem at all.
Great.
Okay, and instead of using Bodoni, I'm going to use something with a little bit of a heavier look to it. And try and find something slab serif, because when it goes this thick and thin, it falls apart when it gets smaller. So just to kind of protect your writing a little bit, Adoni Town, maybe Hatch. Hatch might work well, actually. Museo Slab, Rockwell. That one's a little too heavy now. I might go with that one. Okay, it's just for grins today anyway. I'll let you play with it as you wish. And instead of doing the upper lower, I'm going to do all caps, but smaller. So I just like the look of it. Not everyone does, and that's okay. I'll let you guys pick as you wish. Okay, now because this is still a little thin, I'm going to see if I can. Okay, there isn't a regular option under this font. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. If there isn't, you can always go and add a little bit of weight to it by using your stroke. And there's another step to this that I also will show you.
Okay.
Let me get this sorted out a little bit. Actually, I can go larger. And that's spaced out a bit too much right now. Let's try that. All right, I'm gonna play with these two, get this spaced out. Might go a little bit larger. You can always turn on your grid when you're trying to line things up like this, and you don't have to line this up. It's just a nice clean way to make it look, you know, clean. So I kind of go with that. All right. So let's say that I'm pretty happy with the font on both of these. I'm going to go and I'm going to turn the grid off because it gets hard to see the page if you don't. I'm going to make a copy of these over to the side. Oops. Get back down there. I always like having a copy of my text off to the side so that I can come into this document 2 months from now or whatever, click on it and know exactly what my font settings were before I do the create outlines.
Yeah.
Okay, otherwise you wind up trying to have to match it and you're trying to eyeball it and it just takes too much of your time. So this time I can always come into this document, even though I'm going to use create outlines on these in just a few minutes. I can come to this and I can say, okay, I know exactly what I used, so I can use it on my flyer or I can use it on my brochure or whatever the case might be. It just makes my life easier. Okay, but let's say that I'm pretty happy with both of these. So I'm going to go ahead and do create outlines on this one. Okay, and you can still change the color, but right now I'm just working in pure black and white.
Right.
Okay, now on this one, I have a fill and a stroke. So before, or I'm going to go ahead and do create outlines. So now if you go in tight, you'll see that I still have a fill and a stroke. Now this, when it comes to printing and when it comes to changing my color and everything like that, it's going to make it way more complicated than it needs to be. So while I have all of this selected, I'm going to Object, Path, Outline my stroke. Okay, so now I have a fill and I have my strokes.
Yeah.
And while this is still all selected, I'm going to go to Pathfinder and I'm going to use my shape mode of Unite. Now it just simplified everything down to one path on the outside of the letters. So these letters originally had a stroke on them, but now they're just solid objects. Okay, does that make sense to you what I did?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so it just simplifies things for later on when you're trying to print them, you're trying to adjust the colors and whatnot. Okay, so those are just a couple things that I would do with the text. Okay, now I'm gonna move this guy over. Okay, now you have a really nice heart here and you have a paw print. Now the paw print, are you happy with it like this? Did you want this really stylized look to it? Or were you looking to make it more natural, or what kind of style were you after?
I kind of like how it's, I kind of like the appearance of it right now.
Okay, kind of that stylized look. Okay, do you want to add another paw print to give him 4 toes?
No, I thought that the three like looked good with the heart.
Okay. All right. Now I will suggest that you space these. You see how they're not spaced correctly?
Yeah.
So let's ungroup this. I'm going to grab all three toes. I'm going to align them first. And I'm going to use these distribution. In this
Uh-huh.
case, it's a horizontal. And it just spaces them correctly.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And now I can take just that middle one and just step it up the way you had it before.
Great.
Okay. Now you can group these three if you want. I'm using my keyboard shortcut and grab this one and make sure those are aligned too. They're off by a pixel or two, but that's it.
Okay.
Now you can just group all that. So now your paw print is pretty much laid out as you wish.
Great.
Now you have the same thing going here in that you have a fill and you have a stroke. Did you intend to have a fill and stroke, or did you just want them to be a little bit bigger? Do you know? Do you remember?
I did select a Paul. I mean both, but I don't think I had any purposeful intention in that.
Okay, let's go ahead and do the same thing on here that I did with the text.
Mm.
Okay, with the text here,
Right.
and that I selected it. I went to Object, Path, outline my stroke, go down to Pathfinder Tools, and click Unite. That way I have a fill, but I don't have a stroke anymore, and they're the same size that you had them before. Okay.
Right. Okay.
All right, so that's the paw print done. I'm just going to pull it over here for a minute. Okay, now as of now, actually, before I do that, let me show you something. So right now, if you zoom out on this, oops, wrong way. You have to start judging how well you can see this as it currently is. Now, right now you have line, 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 solid. I think if we can get rid of some of the lines and work more with solid fields of color, I think you're gonna like the look of it a bit better.
Okay.
So let's take the heart and the rectangle. I'm gonna copy those, paste them down here. On both of these, I'm going to fill them with really any color right now because I'm just kind of playing around, but I'm going to take the stroke off. I'm also going to make sure they're centered, so I'm going to use my align tools. And then I'm going to use Pathfinder and I'm going to cut this out. Okay, I have to ungroup.
Right.
And now I can grab these pieces. And then I'm going to put the color. You had this bright pink.
Yeah.
Okay, whoops. But instead of as a stroke, I'm just going to use it as a solid. Close that down. And then I can put this in here. Now I can leave the color black, or I can do another color. Honestly, instead of black, I would suggest like a dark gray. Black is kind of hard. And if we go with a dark gray, it's a little bit softer.
Okay.
I'm going to pull this out, push this up. And instead of this line, I'm going to use something a little simpler. Since that's kind of sharp looking, and actually I'm going to take all this and I'm going to round the corners in a minute. You could also do that on the text if you wanted. But I'm going to round the corners on this, I think, just a hair.
Right.
Just to soften it a little bit. You can only barely see it. It's kind of zoomed out like that. Now, if I like what that looks like, then I can go ahead and expand it so that the paths are rewritten to mirror what that looks like. Or if I think it's a little bit too much, I can always adjust it and undo. Stylize round corners. Click on preview, and I'm going to make that a little bit less. That's about right for my taste. Okay. Click on that. It's a little bit softer. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to Object, Expand Appearance. And that rewrites the path so that it matches exactly what that looks like.
Okay.
Okay, and then the line that I'm going to put in over here to mirror what you had. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to give it the same bright pink color. Oh, somebody's joining us. Hi there, Shelley. Okay, and on this line, I'm going to make it a little heavier, and I'm going to give it rounded corners at the end to make it kind of match this.
Great.
Hi, Shelley.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
That's all right. How are you doing?
She's doing good. My daughter's going to Indianapolis. She had to come over here and book her flight.
Oh, yeah. Well,
okay, I've got one question.
Hang on just a sec, okay? We're working with Dave's logo here, and I just want to finish off the fine tunes that I have here and answer whatever questions he has on this one. In the meantime, Shelley, if you have a rough draft of a logo you want me to have a look at and kind of fine tune for you, you can go ahead and send that to me, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead and just email it along. Okay. So I'm gonna, that's about centered. And I made it so that the box lines up with the text. And right now, this space and this space is about equal, but this space is too tight. So I'm going to take this and move it over. And this is just about getting your design to look consistent and to look professional, to have these equal spaces around. But I think that is about what I would go with.
That looks good.
So we did a few changes, and I was telling Dave later on, if you watch the recording of this, Shelley, you'll have a discussion about why this text has this pink box and why it looks different. But yeah, okay, always. So yeah, but you'll have a difference. But those are changes that I would suggest for you, Dave, is to give yourself more of a solid color as opposed to lines, to soften this line, and to make the wording of this logo equal or larger to the illustration. Okay. Now I can go ahead and I can save this and send it out to you, and that way you'll have it. You can use whatever you want of it. You can change whatever you want. You do not have to make the changes that I suggest. These are just my suggestions based on my taste and what I think I like, you know. But yeah, feel free to use them as you wish or not. Okay.
I do have one other question for you. In general, like last week you had mentioned about the printing bleed, and like I think I was leaning towards maybe doing a flyer for this week. Do we need to be conscious in our submission about the bleed for the printing?
Are you a COM major, or are you a graphic design major, or where are you going? Your COM?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you planning on doing a lot of design creation and printing yourself?
No.
No. Okay. Then I would say don't worry about it right now. What I would say is that just as a file, or just as kind of a habit, let me see if I can find something. It's always a good idea to leave a little space free. Nope, I put those on desktop.
Just to like get in the habit.
Yeah, it's just a habit that I kind of make for myself. I may or may not have left these on. Nope, I didn't on here. Normally, I just go ahead and I put guides on, but I can show you on yours or on a document. Let's come over here and just create another artboard real quick. Now, as far as I remember, this is an 8.5 by 11 page, which might be a typical flyer size. So if I were doing these, there's already a couple guides that are on here. I'm guessing you put these on here?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can use these for whatever, but I usually come in here and I just put 1/4-inch guides on everything for myself. So you already found out how to do that, right?
Where do you do that at?
You basically just pull it down from the rulers. If you
Oh,
don't
okay.
see your rulers, you'd want to go to View Rulers. Okay. You just make sure they're on, and then you just pull it down. So, or pull it across, as the case might be. So I would leave about a 1/4 inch around that document where nothing is in except for the background design. So if you have like boxes of color on your flyer, then you want those to go all the way to the edge and really beyond the edge if we're going to talk bleed and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very least, take them all the way across your flyer. And that way, when they go to print it, you're not going to have these little slices of white on the side.
Okay.
And when you're putting any kind of object on it, whether it be text or an illustration or anything, you always want to be conscious to make sure you keep it. One, you can use it to align your work to make sure it looks clean and professional, but more to the point, you never put anything outside that line because it can very easily get cut off by your printer. Okay, every printing device just has these slight variations. They just are. And we all just kind of learn to live with it. So always extend your backgrounds a little bit beyond your page, and always keep in mind that 1/4 inch or so border around the document. You know, and if you're working like on Billboard, you're going to need like at least a foot. You know, you have to kind of take the ratio and the sizing into account. But on an 8.5 by 11, a 1/4 inch border around it where you don't have anything except for your background is a good idea. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Probably in a bit of a roundabout way. I tend to do that a lot.
I got it.
I'll just have to holler when I get into these long explanations that go into too much. All right. Okay. So yeah, let me save this, and I'm going to send this back to you, Dave.
You did good on that, Dave. That's yours. That was good.
You did do good.
Thank you.
That's why I like you guys being able to send me like your rough drafts so that I can just, you know, fine tune it for you and show you some of the mild things that you can do just to clean it up and to make it easier to see, especially when you shrink it down. It makes it easier for you.
I just feel like it takes me so long because I was freehand everything first because I'm still not used to using the computer for design purposes. So.
Yeah, and it takes a little while to get used to that.
It gets easier though. I've been on it every single day.
You're getting better, right?
Yeah, but you know, I still have questions like on the assignment, you know, that I'm with the 3 different happiness and whatever, you know, I was trying to do momentum, and I wanted to make the M start out small and then gradually raise, you know, where it, you know, because momentum means you get on a force and you stay on it, you know, a track and you stay on it.
Mm-hmm.
And momentum, I was going to do it in a different color, purple, because, you know, I feel right now everybody's losing their momentum, and I think it's a good thing to keep it, you know, because of COVID. I mean, I know I am like, I don't, COVID has me all messed up.
I think a lot of people, you know, everyone I've talked to is like, I had all these projects in mind when we started going to quarantine, and I've done absolutely none of them. And it's like, yeah, I get that. We're about halfway through a few of our projects, but yeah, I think this virus has knocked everyone down. It's just not that we're sick. It's just everything feels off.
Yeah, it's the stress of just not knowing, the unknown.
Yeah. And I think we're in for it for another year yet, but
I do too.
Yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. There's not much we can do about it. All right, gang. So, Shelly, do you want me to look at a logo of yours? Did you have one for me to play with?
I'll be honest with you. I know what I'm going to do, but that's why I was trying to get on this call, because I don't know how to do it. You know the little paw that you had for his, like the 3, you know, the paws?
Uh-huh.
I was wanting to put like make a big paw, with three, there's three toes, and then of course the bottom part. I want to do a paw, but I want to kind of do introverted letters, like put A, L, L, and then paws in the bottom part, like all paws, and it's incorporated all together.
You want the letters A-L-L on top of the paw? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, for the toes, like where the toes are, how you.
Oh, okay. So A-L-L would be like the toes, and then do you want the word paws for like the bottom of the foot?
Yeah, I just want to see how it looks, because that's what but I don't know how to. I know you use the shape modes or the pathfinders, but I still can't get that right.
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
Let me show you a couple different ways of what I think you want to do. The first one I'm going to try is called the blob brush tool. This isn't one that I encourage people to use for a lot of stuff. It can look really sloppy if you're not careful. But for freehand shape, it's one option in addition to using the pen tools that you can use. But you got to be careful. So, let me just show you roughly how to use this one. If you double click on it, you're going to get all the settings.
The blob brush? Okay.
Yeah. Blob brush, I'm going to go up to, that's about 7. It asks you for fidelity, accurate or smooth. I generally keep it in the middle. You might want to go a little bit more towards the smooth, because you may not have a really smooth use of your mouse yet, of your trackpad or your mouse.
Yeah.
So you might want to go a little bit smoother for yourself.
Okay.
There's a couple other settings. I would suggest you just leave them alone for the time being until you get used to them, and then you can
I learned that. I did something, and I don't know what I did.
Yeah, use the default settings unless you purposely are changing one thing at a time, and then you see what it does. Otherwise, you get to the point you're like, I have no idea how I did that. And sometimes you want to repeat it, and sometimes you never want to see it again, but neither case. So, all right, so now I have a slightly larger blob brush. The first thing I'm going to do is just draw my little toe. Now I want this, I don't know if you agree with this, but I want it to be kind of rough and irregular.
Yeah.
You may or may not want that, but I'm going to make it a little bit uneven, a little bit rough.
Yeah.
But right now it's a solid object in the shape of this O, but I want it to be simply a solid object. So once I draw with my blob brush, I'm going to go to my direct selection tool. I'm going to select one of these inside ones. Okay, it's solid right now. I'm going to hit delete. Now all the rest of the inside ones are solid, and I'm going to hit delete again. Now I have a solid object.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So delete, you went to the tool where it's delete path, or?
I actually just hit delete on my keyboard.
Okay, cool.
So once I've selected my point here, you can hit delete.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Now, in this case, it's going to kind of mess it up. So we don't want to do it here. But for my purpose, which was getting rid of all of the interior points, that's kind of the quick and easy way of doing it.
I gotcha.
Okay. Now, if you wanted to, you can still come in here and you can still kind of play around with the path a little bit. This is just one way of kind of playing with it, but it's an option.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing you can do, and I did this on, somebody else sent me their logo the other day. I forget who it was now, but I did some smoothing of paths for them. And just for grins, let me do another one. Okay, let's say that they did this and they're like, well, it's okay, but it's a little on the rough side.
Yeah.
So even after they do that, it's got this little divot here and they're just not happy with it. So what you can do is click on your object. You can go to Object, Path, Simplify. And this is a useful little tool. It simplifies your path, and you can ask how many points that you'll allow it to have.
Oh.
Okay, and it's not completely foolproof. You still might have to do a little bit of fine tuning, but if you have something with 500 points and you want it to have 200 points, this is an amazing way of doing it.
I'm glad you told me that.
Yeah, even something which, when we were doing the dog and the cat and all those things using the pen tool, sometimes when you're doing that, you just have too many points in the end and it's too messy looking, it's too busy.
Yes.
So this is a really nice tool just to come in here, select it, Object, Path, Simplify. And it will allow you to smooth it out a little bit, to clean it up. You can also use cleanup, but cleanup kind of gets rid of stray points in your artwork, which I tend to just remove manually. Another option, and I don't really use this one, but it is in here, if I can find it, is Smooth Tool. So the
I
Smooth
tried using that
Tool,
one, but I didn't quite.
yeah, I don't use this one. Yeah, I'm not really having much success getting, okay, it smoothed a little bit there, I
Oh,
guess.
okay. I see what it's doing.
Yeah, it smoothed a tiny bit, but not a lot. I really preferred using this. I mean, this is to me the easiest one. But again, for everything that you need to do in Illustrator, there's probably 2, 3, or 4 different ways to achieve it. So, you know, I mean, it's just, you know,
Yeah.
you can also just come over here and just do it by hand, which is quite often the way that I would choose to do it as well. So,
Yeah.
you know,
You're good at that. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I've done it a lot. So, and actually look at that. It can be our next little toe piece.
Oh yeah. Perfect.
Maybe a little bit larger just to keep it.
Yeah, I want it to be a larger logo because I'm not really going to have a, you know.
Well, I'll tell you, simple logos can sometimes be your best friends.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to do another one with the blob brush, just so you
Okay.
can see it next and
Watch you. Okay.
more than once. That one's a little wonkier than I wanted it to be, but that's why we have tools available for us. I'm going to delete those.
I'm learning new stuff every day on this.
Yeah, and the more you use it, the more you will learn. I mean, that's really the best way to learn it. You know, when I learned this, I was about 3 weeks ahead of my students teaching them it. I was like, oh God.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like thrown into my first Illustrator class before I had learned the software. So I was about 3 weeks ahead of my students.
Well,
And
you're
you know, I was
awesome.
kind of I was in worry mode the whole time. But you know, I got better at it every single time I taught it. And since I started off teaching it, I don't use nearly as many of these keyboard shortcuts as I could use. And it's mostly
Right.
because you guys can't see me use a keyboard shortcut. So I try not to
Yeah.
use them too often. There's some that I use all the time, but there's others that most people would use a lot, and I don't really mess
Right.
with them. But it's good to start learning them if you're going to be doing a lot of Illustrator work.
Mhm.
Grouping I usually use, I mean, there's some in here I use a lot of, but you know, there's others I just go up here or I use my navigator or whatever, but they are useful. All right, so object path, let's simplify. See, you got rid of that little extra bump I didn't like.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe I'll get rid of a tiny bit more. Yeah, it's not so bad. I still don't like that right there though. Okay, now I get a little fussy about this stuff. Okay, this will bug me every single time I see it unless I fix it. So that's just
Yeah, me too.
most designers are a little anal retentive, and I certainly fall into that category quite well when it comes to my design work. And a lot of other stuff according to my kids, but you know, that's another issue. All right, let's move this guy down. Actually, no, I liked it better.
Perfect. I like the way they're not the same.
Yeah, but it kind of bugs me the way this one's going out, so I'm gonna do reflect.
I did that the other day. I learned what that was.
Yeah, it's another nifty little tool. I like it.
And you just use the automatics, the default.
More or less, yeah, because I mean, I fine tune
Yeah,
everything
there.
as I go. Yeah, I like that better. It just looks a little cleaner. You know.
And it kind of goes in shape with the next toe or whatever. You
Yeah,
know,
that's what I was kind of
curve.
hoping for. This one's still bugging me a little bit though. I'd probably do something else with that, but I'm gonna leave it alone just for the time being.
That's fine.
All right, let's go
I like
back
that
to the
color.
blob brush, or well, do you want to see me do the pen tool, or do you want me to see you the blob brush again?
The pen tool, please, because I'm really I'm playing with it every day, and I'll click on something, and it'll say you have to go to undo something before you can use it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do now?
All right, let's just use simple pen tool. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag out for that first curve.
Okay.
I'm going to drag out, move and drag out. I'm going to move and drag.
Oh, I wish I could do
Move and drag. Move and drag. And finish up that little circle. Okay, and that gives me a good starting point.
I love it.
Now I'm going to extend that a little bit. Maybe soften that a tiny bit. And I want to keep it irregular. That's just my preference. But, you know, some people want it to be a perfect mirror image, and that would be another option. That's where you can do half of this paw print and then go
line.
reflect, make a
Oh,
copy
reflect,
of
okay.
it, and then join them together using your Pathfinder tools.
Which one did you use? Oh, the solid, the shape mode.
Yeah. And I can show you how to do that if you want to do something really symmetrical. Sometimes I want symmetrical, sometimes I don't. Just kind of depends.
I'm a very symmetrical person. Look, I sit here and I'll get a completed object done, and I'm like, I can't deal.
Yeah, it's kind of the dearth of.
I love that. That is so good.
So that's your little logo. Do you have any colors in mind for what you're working on?
I just want something that's, you know, I like the orange and yellows. Those, you know, I really like the one over on the far right where it's got like different, the rainbow, orange, yellow. It's like a mixture of all three, the gradient.
Well, have you seen the libraries? There's some.
Yes.
I like too. I wonder if Earth Tone would have some nice orange mixes for you. Maybe not.
Or gray, or, you know, I want it to be where it catches their eye.
Under seasons, we might find some nice orange and red.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. See, there's some nice ones. If you want those earthy kind of colors, they can be really pretty. Yeah,
I like that one right there.
Yeah, I'm going to hang on to that right up here. All right, so you want the ALL and then pause?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then underneath, you want to put shelter?
Yes, yes. All Paul's animal shelter, isn't it?
Okay.
I'm gonna write down as you're doing it how you put letters into there.
I'm gonna make these a bit bigger because I know once I put letters in there, it's gonna be hard for them to be seen well.
Right.
Unless they have enough size and substance. And because of the complexity of what this is going to be with letters cut out of these solid shapes, I'm going to use a very, very simple, easy to read font. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting.
So I'm not going to use this one, but I'm just going to type in A and L and L so that I have my starting point. Stop that. What is your issue? I fight it every day.
I was doing.
I fight it. Oh, I fight it some days. Okay, copy paste. All right, so those are my A, L, my L. I'm just going to put them kind of sort of close so I can see size-wise what these are going to look like. And just for the time being, I'm going to give them a color. That color. Okay, just for the time being. I'm going to finish my design in black and white, and then later I'll add my color.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, you said to be on there.
Okay, so I want something fairly heavy. I want something really, really simple. I definitely have to go bigger. I mean, Arial Black comes to mind, but maybe there's something else I can use. Maybe.
Right.
I really like that one. Do you have a preference on whether
I like that? I like the hook.
You like a little serif?
Well, you know what? I think some round. I know, and from the readings that it's good to use the serif, but I like since it's for kids and that kind of thing. I wonder if the rounded, you know, where it's like a fun, more.
Let's have a look and see what we can find. I'm gonna clear that off. Do a nice heavy font. Maybe a little bit wider. You might potentially be able to find a nice hand-drawn, but you got to be really careful using hand-drawn fonts.
Is it hard to read?
They can be very hard to read. And for a logo, it's not usually the way I go.
I like that one right. I like that one right there. I like that one.
That one's Arm Wrestler. I've used that one for a couple things.
Arm Wrestler. Okay.
And if you don't have them in here, and you may not, you just go up to find more.
Okay.
You can also look on fontsquirrel.com,
I done downloaded a Blackboard from there from our reading.
Yeah, okay. And
Mhm.
DaFont is another good one.
Which one?
DaFont, D-A.
Oh yeah, that's where I got it off of, the
Yeah,
font.
those are good ones too. Now this one has a little bit of roundedness to it, which might be quite nice.
Yeah,
Can you see?
and legible.
See how it's kind of uneven?
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
So now I struggle with this because once I use a font that has this kind of almost hand-drawn look to it,
Yeah.
it bugs me if the rest of my illustrations and everything else doesn't match that at least a little bit. Now, right
gotcha.
now, I've already done kind of an unevenness to this paw print, so to me,
Mhm.
this would work. But if this was a very, very clean, symmetrical look, like on Dave's, this
Yeah.
font with Dave's paw print, I would not like the look of it together. It would bug me.
No, because you want it to be, you want it to look right.
Yeah, I mean, the
aesthetically.
style to me has to match.
Yeah.
Now, this might be a good choice. This is Nexa Rust Sans Black. It's a nice, heavy font. I kind of like the unevenness to it. This one is a good possibility. Let me also come in and write PAWS because we know that that's coming. Those are all nice and easy to read. I like those. Now, the only downside with this is that you don't have lowercase letters.
Oh.
Now, that's a downside, but here's the thing. You got a couple options. One, you can go much smaller, which you probably would anyway.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and you can also adjust the spacing because right now I have this spaced out just from when I was working with Dave's. But you don't necessarily have to do that. And
I
so
like the spacing because it's like you said, it's easier to read.
It's usually a little easier to read if you space it out a bit. So you can just start going smaller. You can also put shelter underneath it and have animal all the way across, shelter all the way across. That is another option. There's a couple other things. You could also just choose a compatible font. I happen to know that this group of fonts, there's a couple others that are in the same grouping, the Nexa. So I mean, I've used it a few times. I think I used it on a menu some time ago. And yeah, that one's got the shadow. Oh no, maybe not. What did I use with this one? I'd have to hunt it down. I found another font then that had a similar look to it, which I kind of liked with the Nexa font. But again, it's a personal taste thing. So you're going to have to find what you like, what you think looks good together.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, you always want to look and say, okay, do I want all caps? Do I want small caps? Do I want upper and lowercase, or do I want all lowercase? With, you know, if you have the option on a font, you might go all lowercase.
Yeah.
There's one that just showed up. You know, I mean, there are some here that might work well. Now in this case, I'm going to keep it simple and I'm going to stick with the same font. Personal call, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm going to go with. And as I told Dave, I always like to have a copy of my unaffected font off to the side.
I learned how to do that.
So that I know, so that I always know, no matter what I do over here, I know what I started with.
I'll make, what is it when you add it to your library? I've added everything in my library.
Yeah, that's always an option too. And you can have libraries set up with, you know, like individual clients and stuff like that too. All right, so, okay, we're getting somewhere here. I'm gonna move those down. I think I'm pretty happy with these. I'm gonna probably have to make a little bit smaller. Let's see how that goes. Still a bit too big.
And it may not work. This is what in my mind what I wanted, and I'm going
That's
to
all right.
design, so.
The only way you're going to find out if you like it is to do it, or do it on paper first, which is another option. But I tend to work live in here. I probably shouldn't encourage you guys to do that. It'll drive you crazy, but it's one way to learn the software really quick. So when you're trying to force yourself to learn how to do things,
yeah.
Even that's a tiny bit big. Or I can also just make the paw prints a bit bigger too, which might be the way to go.
I think making them that bigger would be good. That orange is actually my tabby cat that I had. He was an orange tabby. I loved him.
Oh, I have an orange tabby.
Do you? I have a tan one. He's sitting
right
over near my
behind
other
my head.
chair.
He's right behind my head on his little mat next to the fish tank.
I
don't
love
spoil my creatures at all.
them.
All right, now we might work. Okay, yeah, this is going to cut us off in a couple minutes, y'all. So keep in mind that I gave you guys the invitation
one,
for the one that starts at 5:45. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'll get him. I'm getting back on.
Yeah, no problem. I wish the school would just get this for us.
I know, right?
But no, they won't. So I do it myself. Because I mean, they actually get it for free too, which is what's really frustrating.
Yeah.
They could get this for free.
Mhm.
Save us all a lot of hassle.
Right? Ooh, I like that. I'm going to play around with it because, I mean, I love that.
Okay,
And
now-
maybe put a, okay, so while you're doing that, I'm looking and I'm thinking, okay, why don't we, instead of all paws, you know, put paws in the bottom part, maybe do just the outline of a shelter, you know, just very simple line, draw a roof and a, you know, something simple.
like around the whole thing.
In the paw, in the all
Here?
paws. Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to get pretty hard to read your text and a symbol and a symbol.
Okay, so yeah, I see
Symbols
what
and
you're
three
saying.
groups of text. It gets a whole lot harder for people to take that in instantly and kind of digest it and remember it.
Yeah.
Remember, the simpler your logo, the easier it is for your audience to remember it.
Yes. Yes.
And
So just put the
ultimately-
paws in the little paw.
Ultimately, we want easy to remember.
Right.
Because ideally, you don't really change your logo all that often. I mean, really, you shouldn't. As soon as you change it, you're losing recognition from your audience. So better not to do it at all if you don't have to.
Right. Ooh, I like
All
that
right.
too.
Okay, so this is coming along. Okay, I'm going to turn that off.
Ooh.
Oh, I know why it let us go past. I was like, but wait, they should have cut us off at 5:45. No, okay, they didn't because you didn't join us till a little bit longer, Shelley. So once
really?
you joined us, that's when the 40-minute count started. So
Well, let me get out and go back.
No, it's okay. No, it's all right. No, they'll we'll just start the next meeting as soon as they cut me off here, okay?
Sure, sure.
Dave, you still with us?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. Now, the next step I'm going to do is called creating outlines, which I went through with Dave, and then I'm going to cut these out of your paw prints, and then we'll look at color, okay? I'm going to go ahead and stop us here and then start with the next half of the meeting, okay?
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to stop share and I'm going to close this meeting, and then I'm going to go straight on to the next meeting. It takes about 5 minutes for the video to process before I can open up the next meeting.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Give me a couple minutes and I'll be in there.
Okay.
Ready? All right, see you in a minute. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.